Clap it, motherfuckers. We're doing it. We're doing it.
I have to be very wary about touching my mic, because it makes little sounds. So
I wonder if this mic will pick me up even if I talk like this. Can you see my level?
Yeah.
Looks good?
Looking good.
Looks good? Okay, because I might just get fucking wild.
Although it's very far away, but I see the level going.
So we think it's picking it up.
Yeah.
I'll just shout into your mic. I'll just I'll make it all the way over there.
Pick it up over here.
I'll be very... Oh!
Well...
Mommy made me mash my M&Ms.
That's very lovely.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's not going to get better than that on this episode. Not for a while, at least. It's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah, this is going to be a day.
Because we're actually reviewing two movies about which I can't even say. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much to say.
There's
so much to say.
There is so much to say.
I woke up this morning feeling sort of overwhelmed by what we had to do today.
Yeah.
Or what I had to do. I don't know how you feel.
I mean, there's something at stake.
There's a lot. There's a lot to do. Should we just get right into it?
Well, I mean, so this is Up-to-Date Cinephile. I'm Kyle Bruehl. This has been Thelen. I Know Movies and You Don't. He does Dead Reckoner podcast. We do this together. We're meeting up every week. It's usually one episode a week, though this is one of two that we're doing. We're going to talk 4 movies, but we're going to
bringing people extra content.
Extra.
Give it a like, give it a subscribe, sound off in the comments.
Yeah, we got our first dislike, which
That's good. Yeah, we're excited. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that.
I do like divisiveness.
We need some cheap heat. I think maybe we can generate it today, hopefully. Yeah.
I think
Inshallah, so. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think we should get into it.
Why don't we invoke Dionysus, or who are the gods of cinema? Who's the patron saint of cinema? Do you know who the patron saint of cinema is?
I don't know. Is it Eisenstein?
Is it? We'll do this one.
Charlie Chaplin?
Who do we want to dedicate this one to?
John Ford.
Let me think. We will dedicate...
Georges Méliès.
Yeah, those are all good choices. I'm going to dedicate my performance today to... God, who do I want to dedicate it to? Yeah, Chaplin's the right answer. I'm going to dedicate what I do today to Charlie Chaplin.
To Charlie Chaplin. All right, patron saint. One of the patron saints of cinema. Today we're going to be talking Ghostbusters Afterlife, the dragging the corpse of a franchise out again in order to... Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Have you ever listened to that whole song? There's a moment in the middle of it that kind of is like in the bridge, or kind of like breaking into or out of the bridge. I don't remember what, but he just says, "Boston makes me feel nice."
Yes, it is.
I love it. And that's a moment that is not as known in that song.
Nope.
And I love it, and it's true. It's a true statement. So people. I mean, we keep it real here.
Yeah, we
are.
100. I went to the New Bev in Hollywood with Katie. We saw a double feature, Rick Moranis double feature.
Ooh.
Of Little Shop of Horrors.
Not in Ghostbusters Afterlife.
No, he is not. He made the very wise decision, I think.
We love you, Rick. Come on the pod.
Yeah, I would love Rick.
We love you. We love you. We love it when you make that transformation to Vince Clortho, the Keymaster.
The best version of Vince Clortho.
Vince Clortho.
Still today.
Does the female character, does the gatekeeper have a name?
Yeah, Zool.
Oh, she's Zool. That's right. Yeah, Zool and Vince Clortho.
Vince Clortho. I'm Vince Clortho.
Vince Clortho.
So, well, I mean, as you can see, Ghostbusters is very revered in this house.
We are pro Ghostbusters.
Very pro Ghostbusters.
My household also pro Ghostbusters. When we worked at a now defunct movie theater, you'd put your favorite movie on your name tag. Mine was Ghostbusters.
Really? Yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
On one of them, at least. I had one that said Ghostbusters, one that said Clerks. We love you, Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith maybe will come on the pod. He might do anything. There.
Yeah,
he's always talking. He could be outside the door right now.
He might bust through.
Ready to come in. He's like
with hot takes.
He's one of our 20. He was the thumbs down. He was the one thumbs down.
He was like, I don't like these guys.
He's got views.
Hollywood Babble on, Hollywood Babble off. To us, he was like, turn that off. Oh, I was going to say, during that double feature for Rick Moranis, they played the Ghostbusters music video. So I saw you got to see it. Great. It has all these celebrity faces like John Candy and I forget some of the others, but they're the ones saying Ghostbusters. Like, and it's very strange. I think George Wendt is in it as well.
George Wendt, shout out Norm.
And Yeah, seeing that, and it's all. Have you seen the music video?
I haven't.
It's
I'm
bizarre.
embarrassed to say.
It is so
we
bizarre.
might have to stop this. I'll watch it.
You should go watch. You should
I
all.
will
go
definitely
watch
watch it. I will watch it.
I mean, at one point,
I'm assuming our patron saints at YouTube make this all possible.
They can. Yeah,
I have a copy of that waiting for me.
At one point in the music video, there's like people in bed, and Ray Parker Jr. comes like out from under the bed, like slides out, and is like, yeah.
Is he's the ghost that gives Dan Aykroyd's character a handy.
Handy. Man, do you know the story of that?
I don't know the story of that.
So apparently that was a whole big thing in the script, was that it was supposed to be a whole sequence where they it's not a dream. They were going to a museum where it was haunted, and Dan Aykroyd, who's a weirdo. I don't know if you all know this. He's a freaking weirdo. He really, Ghostbusters comes from like the lore. He believes that there are ghosts and that you can scientifically like capture that. It comes from
he believes in the sponge vibration.
Yeah, he does. And so there was this whole thing about how ghosts want to interact with people of the corporeal world and engage in sexuality. And so he had like a friend who had like a threesome with two female ghosts. I was like, of course he did. Of course he did. did he not?
You just belly up to the bar one day and you say, hey guys, I got a story for you.
Yeah, and so that was supposed to be a whole segment. It was not supposed to be part of montage. It was supposed to be a whole segment about them getting into the theory of ghosts and sexuality. And Dan Aykroyd was featured, and the only thing that made it into the movie was
that's a damn shame. That's a damn shame. Where's the director's cut?
Yeah, where's the director's cut? Ivan Reitman, where is it?
That footage is like going to be released like 25 years after Dan Aykroyd's death or something like that. It's like it's going to take longer than the JFK files to be made public. Yeah.
Well, before we get into Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think it should be stated. I think our opinions will generate, on this movie based off of a love or veneration for the original and whether or not it captures or whether or not it succeeds.
You would think that.
You would think.
I'm going to go in a different direction,
okay.
but that's reasonable.
I think it's reasonable. It weighs heavy on my opinion of that. I don't think anybody really understands Ghostbusters. I don't think they understand why.
Do you understand Ghostbusters? Are you the only one?
No, I'm not the only one. I think anybody who's trying to do in Hollywood and the control freaks of, trying to get a 4-quadrant film.
Fuck you, Hollywood. We don't care about you. We don't want a deal.
No.
You can take away that first look deal crackle that you've had with me for years. We don't care about you. You're fuckers. You don't know shit.
But I do think that there is a big problem in trying to understand what made Ghostbusters so special, work in a comedy sense, I think in a world building sense, and that kind of use of fantasy and science. And even today, obviously they had the Paul Feig version 2016, which was an unfortunate mess, because of the improvisational comedy that they were trying to do, because they didn't really understand the lore or what really worked. That's a whole different conversation than this one, because I also think this one, while trying to tap into the fandom in a very cheap way, does not necessarily understand what made Ghostbusters special. The slapstick, the sarcasm, the dynamics between the characters, all the different personalities where they all are, even Ray and Egon are they're both nerds, but they're different nerds. They have different focuses and specialties. And then you have Venkman, who is just, totally uninterested, but opportunistic and flirtatious. And when she describes him as like a radio host or a television host, you're like, yeah, that's Venkman. He's the face of the company because he can sell it. He can sell the absurdity of it. And then you have Ernie Hudson. I'm forgetting his character's name right now. Winston. Thank you. I appreciate that. Winston, just a blue collar worker. Come in and be like, whatever. I'll believe anything you have to say. So there's just an interesting dynamic between these four people and what they represent. The different kinds of humor they bring to the table, and I feel like Ghostbusters is supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be focused on the science of figuring things out. And this whole new movie is just not even venturing new science. They are just trying to re-explain to people what you already know if you've seen it. So again, it's a good service if you are coming anew, if you're a child and haven't seen the original Ghostbusters. I suppose that's the intent behind it. But I found it supremely boring. To revisit the traps, to revisit the pack, I found it just boring. And I didn't find any of the characters all that interesting. They're not very fleshed out. I find it a cheapening of what they depend on from the previous franchise. And I was very bored for the first hour. And then when it goes into basically just a rehash of the original Ghostbusters, which that's what it is. I mean, comparisons to Force Awakens are apt. I was thoroughly miserable in the last hour of the film. Like, I was bored and then miserable is how my experience went. But how do you feel?
I need a quick break to get ready to talk about how I feel.
Yeah.
Can we pause the tape?
We can pause.
I got to get into character.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Ghostbusters.
I actually do need a quick break.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
We can leave this all in. It'll be great.
I might. Time comes in a man's life when he must face down the inevitable. I don't know when that is, but I feel it's impending.
I'm ready. This is a lot. Well, we have a lot to talk about this movie.
I do agree.
And I had to clear my mind as well as my bowels before I really got into it. And I hear where you're coming from, Kyle. I really do. I had some time to reflect on this movie. This movie, I think, raises questions that not a lot of movies raise and goes to some, I would say, philosophical and psychoanalytic territory that most movies just do not go to. And I'm going to discuss it in that context. Remember, this is the spoiler-free section. I will give no spoilers.
Yeah.
Nothing will be spoiled. Except maybe, how do I want to put this? Your sort of ability to see this movie without understanding the kind of philosophical and psychoanalytic stakes at place. So, imagine this. I mean, what this movie really is, let me just give you the top line takeaway.
Sure.
It's a meditation on stoicism, right? And whether stoicism can endure in the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be Zen Buddhism. I don't want to talk as much about Zen Buddhism because I don't understand that that's an actual religion that has millions, probably hundreds of millions of adherents in the world.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, and I don't want to pretend I understand it. But Stoicism and kind of the Western traditions, I understand better. I'm talking about, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. Right? So these people live in a world. Let's just think about the Ghostbusters world. Where over the course of 5 years in New York City, just two mass casualty events occurred, right? One where the city was beset by a giant monster made of marshmallows.
Yes. Yeah.
And the second in which the Statue of Liberty itself actually walked through Manhattan.
It's true.
Right? As a river of ooze rose up underneath the city.
This would be traumatic.
This is America's most populous city, one of the world's most populous city, our media capital, right? Our cultural capital, especially then, right? And what's amazing about the characters in this movie is that these events seem to have left no mark on any of their consciousnesses.
Yes, yeah.
They seem unaware, or if they're aware, it's sort of, in fact, in one character, who is kind of, I would say, this sort of, the fool elevated, the hero to which we could all aspire, the character played by Paul Rudd, he actually thinks it's cool. He was like, it's cool, I see the proton pack, it's cool, I see the trap. So what he extracted, he kept on going with his life, and he actually extracted excitement, entertainment, a lust for that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a moment where his life had meaning, or is he simply so psychically strong that he is unaffected by it? In fact, he thinks it's cool. He thinks the paraphernalia is cool.
Yeah.
Unworried. And really unchanged in their perspective about the world, about whether this could happen again. They all keep going on with their lives. These are existential heroes, and we need to see them in that light. The movie then doubles down on the randomness of the world and how you could address it if you were a stoic hero. Because the middle part of the movie, the scenes are actually, I don't have this like on authority, but I can't imagine another explanation. The scenes are actually shuffled out at random throughout the middle of the movie. Mm-hmm. So they take them, and it's weird because it like appears realistic, but there's like this surrealistic undercurrent where they take the scenes and they move them around at random. So things happen, but then even then they don't affect the characters because the characters exist outside of the normal causality that weaker people do. Mm-hmm. They're unaffected by events. They keep going. They keep going and going and going. But then the movie, and this is what I think is interesting, right? As the movie gets into its third act, it does, there is I don't want to spoil anything, but there's like a burst of carnality that comes forward for some of the characters. Some characters stay the course, some of them give in to carnality, to lust. Mm-hmm. So the question is, for some of them their stoicism endures, for some of them they give in to carnality, right? And so by the end of the movie, and I think the movie bravely doesn't give us an answer, right, about which one can endure, right? Because some of them remain sort of existential heroes, and some of them give in to carnality and have to be saved, right, from their carnality.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that, these are philosophies, right, that I don't think get talked about a lot at cinema at this level. I don't think they do. I don't think they get explored a lot.
You don't think this is accident? You think this is all they rooted this in philosophical intent?
There is no way that this movie was made intentionally to not be the way I describe it. If you wanted to make a movie that was entertaining in a traditional sense, you would have done things like make it funny, which they bravely elect not to do.
They do not.
They do not. You go to it, you think it's going to be funny, right? It's a Ghostbusters movie. Yeah. You think of the first movie. We both love the movie. I think that the first Ghostbusters movie is a almost perfect movie. Like it's just so it's like a watch. It's like a Swiss watch. It's perfectly tuned. A perfectly constructed piece of entertainment, right? This movie eschews that. It is not interested in entertaining you.
None.
That's a brave choice.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could make a movie that was this disinterested. I wouldn't say disinterested. I would say aggressively uninterested in being entertaining.
Yeah.
Make a pointed commentary. I don't think you could do that unintentionally. I don't think that's something that could just happen, Kyle.
Yeah. This is an interesting take. This is not what I was expecting today. Because I think the easy route is to say, well,
it's just not very good.
It's just not very good. No.
But maybe it's so good you can't handle it.
You can't. Most of the time, I don't think I can handle the truth. You
really can't handle the truth.
I absolutely not. Right. This is an interesting take because if we are to interpret it in this sort of serious-minded sense, because your approach is the only one that could give it sort of a reason to exist. Because the reason...
The
raison d'etre. Yeah. I mean, basically, its existence as a piece of entertainment, whether it is lore, whether it is for children to be entertained in sort of, in the jokes and the character dynamics, none of them are
not interested in that.
They're not. No, because
there's no interest in being entertaining.
The characterizations are thin, simple. The jokes are hesitant, not confident.
Like the movie is so avant-garde that somebody says something early in the movie extremely unfunny, and another character says that's funny, which is like almost mind-blowingly weird. Like you cannot. I mean, what you have to think about is, like, you have to think that this movie was made, that they took David Lynch, they took Jennifer Lynch, they took his daughter hostage and made him make this movie.
Yeah.
If you think about it in those terms, it will all make sense.
I mean, that is a... Interesting thought process, because obviously, I mean, I love it because I mean, this movie is a horrendous bore. It's not funny.
That's the point.
Yeah, and if it's the point,
you have to adopt the philosophy of the movie to get through the movie.
And so you're right.
It forces you.
You're right. It would have to
become a stoic.
Yeah, it would have to be a divide. Yeah, it's stoicism versus
this was such a powerful
hedonism.
This was such a powerful filmmaking experience, or film watching experience for me, because I was in a crowded theater. You know, it's opening weekend. I was in a crowded theater. There were some dudes next to me that were just talking, and I'm what they call, you know, since we're talking in psychoanalytic terms, I'm kind of what they call an asshole, and I will just tell people to shut up, right? Because I feel like
I used to be that. Because I go to the movies
I don't
with
say shut up, but I'll say like,
well, can you please be quiet?
Yeah, I'll say like, you know, you can't talk through the whole movie. Like I've said, like, you can't talk through the whole thing. Like I'm not like someone who, like, if you whisper a little, I don't care about that. You can even talk a little, right? But like if you're having like a normal, I think the pandemic has sort of fucked people up. They don't go in public anymore. And I've seen in multiple movies people just having like normal conversations during the movie. You can't do that. That's not okay, right?
I had a gallery of men behind me. A gallery of men. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. That would have been more entertaining. No, they thought they were the comedians.
They were like the guys from the opening Zoolander, just playing in the gas station.
Yeah, but they thought they were God's gift to comedy.
Oh,
because they were just
they were going to MST3K.
But they weren't, though. They were contributing on top of what they thought was funny. They were enjoying the experience in the sense, the opposite sense that you are proclaiming that it should be.
It's like the Mark Zuckerberg character says in Social Network. If you could have made Facebook, you would have made Facebook. If you could be funny, you wouldn't be sitting in that theater.
Yeah.
You'd at least have a screener. But that's, you know, so the point being, like, usually I would be frustrated. But at this point, I just gave in to it. And even once I engaged them, because when the muncher comes on the screen and they're like, whoa, they kind of got in, they're like, what the fuck is that? I was like, that's Muncher. I just turned to them and said, that's Muncher, right? Because I wanted to get into it too. Yeah. I wanted to talk about Muncher. I was excited to see Muncher. And
Muncher being the Slimer version of this.
Muncher is a larger blue version of Slimer that, instead of just sliming you and freaking you out, actually spits about 100 metal nails a second. Thankfully can't hit anybody.
Yeah.
But he seems more lethal.
The implications of that are
which, once again,
dangerous.
Is what this is a difference between this movie and the original Ghostbusters. Is Slimer is fun. The worst case scenario of what he can do to you isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Whereas this, the stakes are raised. A Muncher could do a metal nail genocide.
Which this goes into your point. The stakes are raised, and yet you don't feel it. So the whole point is an artistic deconstruction of the blockbuster expectation.
I mean, like, just to give you another example of how brave this movie is, you get Finn Wolfhard, right, who is from the star of Stranger Things, this sort of child star making behemoth bestriding Netflix.
Yeah.
And you look at, you know, his co-star Millie Bobby Brown, great name, love that name, who goes and does Godzilla vs. Kong, which is just sort of a fun movie, and she makes jokes and she's fun. She's with the dude, she's hanging out doing conspiracy theories with the dude from Atlanta, and they're
Brian Tyree Henry,
and they're funny. Like, they're the actual one funny part of that movie, outside of the guy who jizzes when he puts the Mechagodzilla head on, which is probably the scene of the year for me so far, like the film moment of the year. She goes and does just like a fun movie. Finn Wolfhard agrees to play one of the most unlikable screen characters I've ever seen. I can't imagine anyone becoming invested in him in any way. I would describe his character
he's there for the simp audience.
Generic asshole teenager with no redeeming qualities.
Yeah.
And this is the guy whose star is rising, and he chooses. This is like the equivalent of choosing have your first movie be directed by Bergman. I mean, it's unbelievable choice.
This is cries and whispers.
I mean, it's an unbelievable choice. So, like, let me play an extremely unlikable character. It's very brave for someone who probably has a high Q rating, who people like, who sort of is a kid star, to go and say, I want to play an extremely unlikable character. Oh, by the way, make my mother an alcoholic who can't pay the rent, right? It's just, it's to take the lighthearted of Ghostbusters and put it into such a oppressive, but also sort of just an existential kind of nightmare.
Yeah,
that's amazingly brave.
It is. No, this is a brave piece of cinema, as you were describing. I love this. This is so funny.
You really committed to the bit. I appreciate that.
No, I really love it. It's so funny.
You really I'm going to take off the sunglasses. We can stop the bit. You committed to the bit for a long time.
No, I thought that was wonderful because, you know, obviously. I
didn't know you were going to commit to the bit to that extent. No, I'm so excited. I'm glad I took that poop. I think that really helped.
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, no, it was an evacuation of a lot of things.
I thought that bit would go for like 5 minutes.
No, it's gone. It's gone long. No. I love this because obviously the whole point you're making is that that's not the point of this movie. The point of this movie is supposed to entertain, and it does nothing with that expectation. Like, it is a
let's start spoilers. Everyone dig out the bit.
Well, here let's get into it, because this movie opens up with Egon Spangler, who apparently is
not Egon Spangler, some imposter.
It's Bob Gunton, actually, who is the warden in Shawshank Redemption.
There you go.
It's so just a little tidbit. Bob Gunton plays him in this kind of facade of Egon Spangler. But you're right, though. It's not him. Whoever made this movie doesn't understand Egon Spangler as a character. Does not understand the Ghostbusters franchise as what it's supposed to be, as kind of inquisitive comedy.
I have no idea what people thought.
Yeah.
I watched this movie. It's like I felt my soul leave my body.
Yeah.
Watching this movie, thinking like, how does this exist?
Yes.
Like, so we've had 2 Ghostbusters movies, right? One which was just an attempt to make a totally different movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And slap the name Ghostbusters on it. Okay.
People responded negatively to that.
Fair enough. I don't care about that. It just, once again, like, I don't... let me make a disclaimer here first. You're sort of Gamergate and Gamergate adjacent people who are like, you're ruining my childhood. You are fucking pathetic incels. Turn off the computer, get out, touch grass, and live your fucking life. Like, nothing can... Yeah. Like, I'm so strong, I guess, mentally, that I can see a movie called Ghostbusters and have it not at all affect my feelings about the other movie called Ghostbusters.
Yes.
And that seems to be a kind of mental acuity and strength which is not evenly distributed in the population, because people get upset. I don't care that it's called Ghostbusters. I don't care that the last one was called Ghostbusters. I think that the last one getting sucked into this culture war, voracious culture war bullshit that we can't avoid in our society.
It was
obscured the fact that it was just not a very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was the big one of the big launching points of the culture war. I mean, it was breeding and evolving.
It was where the Gamergators came out, where they started doing review bombs of Rotten Tomatoes, so it would be like 0.01 on the user rating on Metacritic and shit. Yeah. It's like, get a fucking life.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Like, anybody who gets involved in like a Metacritic pylon, you need to fucking take a sledgehammer to your computer and go get a fucking life.
Yeah.
Give me a thumbs down for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine by me. I'll take that. That's a proud thumbs down if that's what.
I mean, but it's just like it obscured the fact that was not a very good movie.
Yeah.
And this is a worse movie.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought process.
That movie was like, I don't know, like, at least like there were moments where Leslie Jones and what's his name, fucking Thor, or is it Thor's brother?
McKinnon was good. Yeah, Chris Hemsworth had some good bits.
Whatever, one of the Thor adjacent people.
It's Chris Hemsworth.
There were at least moments of humor, right? Like, and I felt bad for those people, because there are all of the people involved in that movie, all the people on the screen are legitimately funny people, right? And that struck me as pretty much your clear example of like, and I think there's probably some of that going on with this movie too, although there's something even weirder going on with this one, of like too many cooks, right? I mean, like, here's the bottom line with Ghostbusters, like the original one. I think, like, it's just lightning in a bottle, right? It's just lightning in a bottle. You had you just had the perfect moment for a bunch of people, right? And this is the problem with pre-sold franchises, right? Which is that, whatever you think about Star Wars or the MCU or whatever, or Dune now maybe will become one, there's a lot of, you can sort of squint your eyes and understand, well, to make a credible science fiction or fantasy epic on that scale, there's a lot of world building that needs to happen. And if you can find a world that you like, right, and sort of co-opt that and make it into something interesting on the screen, well, then a lot of the work has been done for you by someone who invested a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, same idea, right? Some very good imaginative writer has spent decades of his life creating this world. And if you can draw from that, you not only you have a pre-sold audience, but you get some of you leverage their labor, right, in a way that is hard, right? It's hard to create a credible fantasy world. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, there's a lot of infrastructure you have to build up, right? But there is no Ghostbusters universe, right? The point, there's no way to follow up into a world where giant monsters come on and then New York is the same a few years later. That doesn't make any fucking sense. That's not the point. It's not interesting as a universe.
Yeah.
The movie is great because of the exigencies of that moment where a bunch of talented people in their primes did their best work. Right?
Yeah.
That's why it's great. And I understand the business rationale for calling it a Ghostbusters movie, and nothing's going to change that. And there's nothing I can say. But, and we made the same joke about Marvel Eternals, the problem with these shared universes is you start accreting too much plot, and so everything feels like bullshit, right?
Yeah.
These people, they consistently seem to not be able to embrace the fact that, there's a moment where the kids get locked up because they were fighting Muncher, and they're like, ho, you guys were joyriding. It's this fucking blue ghost just rolled through the town. 5 minutes earlier in movie time, you were talking about it on the cop radio, and now you're just acting like it didn't happen. People just have to act in the most bizarre ways.
Yeah. Right?
To even make the plot move. And none of it makes any sense.
Which takes, again, this is a very different thing from the original. In the original, there's a business model because there are people who are dealing, normal people, like the maitre d' at that hotel, or that they don't know what's going on, and so they call on these people. They're aware. I mean, even the library at the beginning, people are experiencing these things. So there's this whole weird thing with kids. It is very much a Stranger Things influence, where the kids are the people with wisdom. The kids are the one who's going to guide us forward. And so the adults have to act ignorant. The adults have to act as though they are not believing what they're seeing. And so it's in order to
but the difference is that Stranger Things structurally is still more like Ghostbusters in the sense that it has... I mean, this is funny, right? Because this is not an act of genius, right? You have to slow roll out the bad thing so people get to understanding it and appreciating it at different points. Mm-hmm. Right? That's just a normal... But, this movie... This is why the middle of the movie seems organized at random. Literally, pretty early in the movie, they get a trap that has either Zool or Vince Clortho in it.
Unclear which one. That's true.
They open the trap...
Probably Vince Clortho because he's going after a man.
A giant monster comes out and goes, ah! Zips off. And then literally they just keep going about their business. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the most mind-blowing sequences I've ever seen. They just act like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because the movie is not ready to escalate, but they still decided to put the scene in there. And Paul Rudd's character just they all seem kind of unaffected by it. This thing happens that any sane person would be like, and granted, we're in a world where the existence of ghosts is widely understood, right? They just are like, no, that was weird. and they just keep going along.
And they try and make it
as
a
the movie.
Yeah, a weird like silence joke in the drive home. So let's get into some of this.
I mean, you'd think like if you saw that, it would prompt a pretty big response from you.
Yeah, at least shock.
That would be the most strange thing that happened in almost anybody's life.
Yeah,
and they just kind of keep putting along. It's just. They keep on sprinkling in. You know, they've got this character whose name is Podcast. I didn't make that up. Check the.
It's probably one of the worst inventions.
Who is literally, once again, to go back to the Eternals, he's the Kingo character, the Kumail character, who just keeps on making like quips and jokes throughout the movie. I bet you if you timed it out, they occur like once every like 2 minutes 37 seconds.
Yeah.
Like there's an algorithm that says we have found the optimal rate of joking.
Yeah.
Is every 237. I'm not going to go through this. You can go through this. If you're one of these people who review bombs, Metacritic, stop, get a pirated copy of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Don't actually do that. Haha. Get one that someone filmed on a camcorder. Don't do that. That's illegal. I'm just kidding. And time it. I think I'll be right.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 6 minutes and 66 seconds.
It is, and there's nothing worse than a poor child actor, and this kid is very poor.
I can't blame any actor. I understand what you're saying.
The script is garbage.
But, I cannot blame any actor, because I found some of them winning. The one girl is very winning.
Grace McKenna is good. Yeah.
Paul Rudd is one of the funniest guys around. Like, Paul Rudd is a great talent, right? I find Paul Rudd to be hilarious.
And charming. Yeah, I do too.
I mean, and he can elevate stuff like that's very pedestrian, like the Ant-Man stuff. Like, he's good enough to make those movies, like, somewhat more entertaining. But this is, I mean, he is, and by the time the movie gets to, like, a few moments that are actually kind of entertaining in a certain way, like, I thought the little marshmallow man, that could have been, like, a good bit.
Handled poorly.
But, like, at that point, you're just so, like, just beam me up, Scotty. Like, this shit is just, I mean, I really, it's been a long time since I've seen a movie that made me feel this disassociated.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not even like, I just blew my mind. It just blew, its existence does blow my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to, because I mean, the movie ends right with this tribute to Harold Ramis, which I think
gross.
It's gross. But what's weird is I don't think it's cynical, right? If it were cynical, maybe I could have a different perspective. I mean, I think these people all legitimately loved and cared about this guy. Like, I think they all did, but like. It's just they can't get anywhere with even that, right? I guess the great tribute to him would have been not to make this movie.
That would have been the greatest tribute. I actually want to talk about Egon Spengler because it weighs over the plot of this movie, and I think the interpretation is very strange. I mean, the interpretation of Egon Spengler...
I just remembered the most fucked up scene of the movie.
Oh, what is that?
This movie also takes a very... Just to go back, let me put the sunglasses on.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
This movie asks a deeply weird and philosophical question. Is the highest form of love you can have for someone being their stalker?
Yes.
Legit question that this movie raised.
Question. Yes, because there's a lot of complications about Egon Spengler. Apparently, a deadbeat dad who leaves his family.
No beat
dad.
He goes. He books it.
He books it to go and deal with his obsessions. Now, I am not unquestioning to the kind of.
But also, let's understand what makes Egon crazy. What makes him have to flee society. What makes him have to go to some fucking shithole. Is he says that a thing that you just saw happen could happen again. And nobody believes.
And nobody believes. Not even his partners.
Not a soul.
Not even his business partners and friends. Like,
not a soul believes. It's like if I were to say on September 13th, 2001, they'll never attack us again.
Yeah. Yes.
Or no, it's like if I said, this could happen again, and everyone was like, What?
What?
You fucking moron.
You're absolutely out of your mind.
Nuts.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, in this universe, the Statue of Liberty also manhandled.
The Statue of Liberty walked down, I think, Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so like.
So he's like the exact same thing could happen.
That maybe this is like a Twilight Zone universe where like people's memories reset every year or something. Like, is this? I mean, there could be some underlying conceit that we just don't know.
That'd
Although Paul Rudd does remember, right? He remembers.
Yes, he does.
He thinks it's cool, but he remembers.
So he has a disassociative personality as well. He doesn't realize that it's a terrible thing that
he just thinks it was fun. He's like one of these people who like thinks like I mean it's fun. It would be fun to be in a war.
There is a difference. There is a difference between the ash of like the World Trade Center, and you don't play around in that, but you could probably as a kid maybe play around in the marshmallow, like, and so maybe he has fond memories of.
I mean, the casualty count of Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 had to be much higher than 9/11. I mean, it had to be much higher, right? I mean, the things rumbling down. These things. This is like a kaiju battle, right?
Yeah,
this is not. I mean, that's 2 buildings, right? Where they managed to evacuate like a decent number of people. I mean, I don't want to understate the terror of 9/11 and I think it was 3,000 some lives lost. But like this had to be an order of magnitude more than that.
Sure, certainly.
I mean, imagine two like these things they're rumbling around New York City.
Yeah,
like they're cruising. It's
incredibly
like we're talking about one building.
City.
Yeah, we're talking about the densest part of America. Yeah. Right.
So not only you're right, Spangler. These things have happened. People have witnessed them. People are aware, as you said, and his business partners tell him he's crazy, and he steals all their equipment. He's a deadbeat dad and leaves his family. And none of this makes sense to me. I don't think that is what Spangler would do. I think you could even go about the same way where he wants to deviate and focus on something and it's not good for the business. And so he leaves his business partners to venture something else. You can explain it that way and they're like, well, we don't talk anymore. He went on to do his own thing. He fractured the business.
Dude, we live in a world today, right? The world that we're sitting in where something like 30 to 40% of Americans think that the rapture is coming soon.
Yeah.
And yet in this Ghostbusters universe, Egon is the only one that's driven to apocalyptic thinking on the basis of actual apocalyptic events.
Apocalyptic events that have been recorded or in history, and people know about them. And so there's something really bizarre, and you could also explain away him not being in contact with his family rather than him being a no-beat dad who leaves his family. It could be that she wasn't into science. He was kind of he was probably on the spectrum, which he is. He probably is. He has just an obsessive personality. He focuses on this stuff, and they just didn't get along. You can be like, oh, we don't talk to your grandpa because I think he's a little weird. Well, we want to know grandpa, and it's unfortunate that this event has taken him from us. But again, they have to make him. Carrie Coon's character calls him an asshole in the movie.
But she's also, just to show you how bizarre and nihilistic this movie is. She is an alcoholic, and that's just like played for laughs a few times. Like it's brought up that she's a fucking alkie.
Lush.
She's clearly an alcoholic. She can't pay her rent. I mean,
it's dad's
her
fault.
life is disintegrating. This is a very bleak movie. Like the setup is bleak.
Hey, this is for children.
I mean, yes, sort of children with regard to the construction of a story, maybe. Here's what happens, right? I'm certain that this is what happens. The people who own something like Ghostbusters, Sony, right? They look at it, and to paraphrase the great Illinois governor Rod Blagojevich, they say, "This thing's fucking golden. This thing's fucking golden. I can't just give it away for free," right? They've got this thing that they know is golden, and they're not wrong. I went and saw this movie, right? I got in my car.
There's an obligation there, though. Now that we're doing,
but
this
I would have seen this movie probably. I saw the last one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? But the point is, we're talking about this movie because it's a big deal. It's a big deal because it's a Ghostbusters movie. It's a big release. It's the number one main movie. I'm sure it'll have the biggest box office of the weekend.
It already is.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, we go see it, right? I get it. So they're not wrong, right? It's an asset. It's an asset. They want to leverage it, right? But, like, it just seems like, I feel bad for the people. I feel bad for the creative people involved in this. I don't think Jason Reitman is a bad filmmaker.
He's fine. I
liked Up in the Air. I thought that was a good movie.
I mean, he has an on and off. Like he's a hit or miss kind of filmmaker. Tully and Young Adult are good. I think Up in the Air is good. Juno's fine.
I like his philosophy too of like making movies. Like one thing that he said, right, is that his dad told him like, I made Ghostbusters and I couldn't follow it up. I didn't work a lot because I was worried it wasn't going to be as good. But you can't get in that mindset. Just make movies. I respect filmmakers who put out work, right?
Sure.
Not everyone has to be Terrence Malick or Stanley Kubrick, right? I respect guys who work. And there's been a lot of great directors. I mean, we're going to do a series about Hitchcock. Hitchcock made a lot of great movies, but they're not all great. Not all great. And I'm not saying Reitman is Hitchcock, but he worked. Hitchcock made movies.
He's made
movies.
You're right. I mean, in the 40s, you had all these like William Wellmans and Michael Curtiz, and they made some great movies, but they were workmen. They were workmen filmmakers.
I respect people who put shit out there,
and
accept that it's not all going to be their best work.
Yeah, we have this expectation of filmmakers as auteurs, and so I don't think Reitman is an auteur, but I think he is a storyteller. He's a workman filmmaker, and so every so often he comes out with some good. Like I like Young Adult, I like Tully, I like Thank You for Smoking. I do like those, but Men, Women, and Children aren't good. It's Labor Day.
Agree with you. I mean, he's not going to go down in history as like the way Hitchcock will.
No.
But I'm just saying, or even Spielberg, who at least he's slowed down now, but had that same output where he'd make movie after movie, and some of them are classics, and some of them are good, and a couple of them are lousy, right? I mean, like, I respect it, right? I respect that people go out there and they work, right? And they're, I would rather have, from even a filmmaker who I think is good, not great, which is where I would put Reitman, I would rather have more movies from them than have them just wait until they have the perfect diamond.
I get you.
Yeah. Although some filmmakers are going to work that way, and they're going to make a movie every 10 years. Writers are the same way, right? Some great authors, they put out a lot. Some great authors, they give you a novel every decade, right? It's different. I understand people are different. People need to do what they want to do. But I respect the person who works. I respect the person who puts it out there. So I feel bad for him. I feel bad for everyone involved in this movie. It's just so... But we've seen the same shit happen with Star Wars. It happens a little bit less with Marvel because at least what Marvel benefits from is that people are less invested with... Like, the smart thing that they do on the Marvel side is they keep on just pulling out new characters that people are not specifically invested in. Right?
Yeah.
So they have more freedom with them, right? And every time they just... And they kind of get done with one, and they're like, well, maybe we don't have anything interesting to say about Captain America right now. Maybe we'll take Thor from being like a serious to a funny one. They've got so many different characters, and only a few of them have the same kind of emotionality around them, right? So they can kind of go in different directions, right? Like, who gives a fuck about the Scarlet Witch, right? Who gives a fuck about Loki, right? It's like people are not so invested in those specific characters that they can't just play around with them. Whereas with Ghostbusters, I mean, it took them almost all of my life to get Bill Murray in another one of these movies, right?
To play Venkman, because he is in the 2016.
Yeah, he has a little cameo in that, but to play Venkman, to bring that character back,
I mean, he was the one who held everything up,
and perhaps rightly so, right? I mean, if this is what you get at the end of the fucking Yellow Brick Road, right, is a movie like this. Like that, but see, like, maybe he understood the thing that I said, and I feel like you agree with, which is that this, and Ghostbusters 2 is a good movie. I'm happy that it exists, even though it's not as good as the first one. These guys just it was just a magic thing they did.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some act of like great world construction that you'd want to keep coming back to. I mean, that's like for whatever shit has happened with Star Wars, like Lucas is such an amazing visual person, right? And got such amazing visual people around him that like that's a world you want to see things from.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think about like the cantina scene or Jabba's palace, right? You're like, I want to go back there and see some more shit that happens there.
Yeah.
Right? You don't feel it. I mean, yeah, they've got the... Like, what made it magic was, like, those people at that moment.
Yeah.
Right? Those actors and that writer and that director. Like, that's what made it happen. And that's, like, to just, you know... That's it. That's the thing. And you can't get that again.
No, you can't.
That's just alchemy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, like... You make a lot of movies, and sometimes they turn out great because you hit a home run, right?
Yeah, you get that it is magic. It is chemistry. I mean, because Harold Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray coming together. It's synergy, and it's their interplay
Sigourney
of personality.
Weaver.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver,
Moranis.
Rick Moranis. Yeah, Ernie Hudson.
You get these people who are one of the best scenes in this movie, one of the only ones that's watchable, is the little post-credit sequence where they do a little joke between Sigourney Weaver and Bill Murray replaying the electroshock card testing scene. Like, at least that's charming. If I'd enjoyed the movie, that would have been a nice little cherry on the top, right?
Exactly. Well, and so this is... I do have this problem with what they do with Egon and Harold Ramis, because I felt... not just uncomfortable, I felt it was inappropriate what they did. Is they essentially recreated him in a very...
Yeah, they did. They Princess Leia'd him.
In a ghostly form, and it becomes very awkward because
he's a Force ghost.
Yeah, he's a Force ghost. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it is. And he doesn't speak, so it becomes incredibly awkward. It suffocates the scenes. You get the feeling that they wanted it to be sentimental and they wanted it to be endearing, but I found it deeply unsettling, and I don't like where this is going. I mean, the whole princess. I mean, the whole Carrie Fisher in Rogue One is bothersome. Peter Cushing as well, in that. I don't like where this is going, and I feel like it's inappropriate. You don't like
where it's already gone.
Yeah,
I think you're already there.
Yeah, no. What? But people are talking about like putting James Dean into movies, like putting his likeness onto a person because of the digital recreation. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, and it has some very strange implications.
Just make a fucking animated movie.
Yeah.
Just make an animated movie. I love animation. We haven't really talked much about animation. I love animation.
Next week we'll get to talk some animation.
I love animation.
Yeah, we'll
make
do
an
that.
animated movie.
We're gonna do that.
You know. That's the beauty of cinema, is that it offers you an avenue. Right?
It does.
Make an animated movie.
Yeah.
You can draw a picture of James Dean and make a movie about James Dean, animated. That's fine.
Yeah.
But putting in a sort of uncanny valley weird James Dean fucking robot character, creepy.
And so everything about
fucking creepy.
Yeah, yes, very creepy, very creepy. I mean, the implications are troublesome, and whether or not you get the family's permission to get the corpse of their dad or the estate like out, I still think it's disgusting. I hate it. I hated everything about it. I knew it was coming, and it bothered me. It bothered me immensely, and. Trotting out the old cast.
They should have made a giant Harold Ramis, and he's the
big Twinkie.
No, he's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
That would be the worst.
Oh god, I would have loved it. Because what's funny is the movie is so tonally fucked that that near the end, all of a sudden it leans into kind of a B movie aesthetic with the way Gozer the Gozerian looks, and the way they kind of. The way they fuck,
and
that whole thing is very.
Did you like the implication?
Like the B film, like aesthetic, like the whole Gozer's like whatever you want to call it, palace, temple, splitting Ivo Shandor in half, like that whole thing. That was much, wasn't it? That felt very B movie to me, like. I would have enjoyed if they'd done the whole thing as like a beef movie that could have at least been. I mean, it would never happen.
No,
right?
no.
But at the end they don't have anywhere to go, so they go to B movie territory.
Yeah, you got that.
What a strange choice.
It's all very strange. Yeah, you have that moment where J.K. Simmons is playing Ivo Shandor. It's like preserved for like 1945. I guess he died, but it's so strange because it's like why it doesn't necessarily explain why he's there. There are so many plot hole gaps. Not that it matters. This movie just moves at a pace and a click where you're not supposed to
say there's plot holes was to be like say there was a plot.
Yeah, to give it a little more credit. But yeah, Gozer rips him in half.
Just wastes it.
This is a children's movie.
In a different movie, that's funny, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I and you know it's gonna happen. They telegraph it. Yeah, it's whatever. But my daughter would not handle that well.
No,
but it's just like I just don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand
it.
Yeah.
It's just I always think of the scene in Bulworth where he's like, guys make violent movies, you make movies with sex, you make all this, but sometimes they're already good. They're just not good. And this movie is just not. It's really not good.
No, it's
and I don't
bad.
know why. I mean, like I said, I think the problem is that it's worth too much. Which means that ultimately the thing passes through a million hands, and what happens is that it becomes a Frankenstein's fucking monster, and there's nothing to be done.
No.
Have you ever had to draft a document in Google Docs that 20 people had to pass on? That's what it feels like. Is everyone. So here's what happens when you have to do that. I don't know how many of our audience have had shitty office jobs. You write something in Google Docs and you send it out into the world. And, it used to be back in the olden days, it would go from person to person to person, which was way better because then it would have kind of a coherence to it. But instead what happens is everybody needs to come in and comment on your document, and everybody sees the comments that everybody else is making. So a couple things happen. One is that everyone has to say something, right? Because you're not adding value if you don't say something. Because your boss is going to see whether or not you gave comments, right? They're going to see whether or not you came and said something, whether you added value, right? And everybody comes in and adds so much value that it becomes incoherent. You get a bunch of incoherent feedback. You get pieces of feedback that are not that are mutually exclusive, that you couldn't follow both of them, and it's basically your document becomes like a fire hydrant that every dog in the neighborhood is pissed on, right? And so you just sit there and you start to lose your mind, right? Because you can't reconcile all these comments. And so at the end of the day, you just try to create something that's perfectly smooth, that will just, it's like something that will just pass through with no trace.
Yeah.
Right? And this movie has that feel to it of
Absolutely.
Something that just many people gave contradictory feedback to, and that it created something that just doesn't make sense, right? Someone came and said, you need more of this. Someone came in and said, you need less of this. Someone came in and said, well, I don't buy this. They gave your classic executive producer's note. I don't buy this scene. Okay.
We need more product placement.
Whatever. Well, at least that you can do.
Yeah.
Right? We haven't talked about the predominant role that Walmart plays. Although, I mean, of all the things in the movie, well, yeah, if you lived in that town, you would shop at Walmart. So
yeah.
at least that's coherent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't know. We talked about this a little bit last night. I don't know what that shit does for Walmart. Everyone's aware of Walmart. Walmart does not suffer from a lack of awareness of its existence in the world. I suspect that they squeeze a bunch of money out of these old fucks and let them come to the premiere or something, or let them, spend 5 minutes talking to Paul Rudd or whatever flips their switch.
Yeah.
I don't know what they get for whatever money they have to pay for that. But I don't know that I don't know that Walmart's name recognition or brand awareness really needs much help.
No.
But that's neither here nor there. In the scheme of this movie, that's the least of my problems, right?
Sure. Yeah, me as well. Yeah.
Because it just seems like 17 EPs and studio executives and fucking what is that story about Mel Brooks and the Elephant Man with David Lynch that is so great, right? Do you know this story where they send
not
people,
immediately to mind.
They send people, so Mel Brooks hired and produced Elephant Man. And
he sought out David Lynch.
Hired David Lynch to direct it, right? And they send a print or they send some sort of early cut to some studio executives, and they come back with notes. Of course, they come back with notes, right? And I think Mel Brooks sent them a letter to the effect of, like, we're showing this to you because you're our business partners and we want to let you know what's going on. But we're not interested in the opinions of Neanderthals or something like that. I mean, he says something really pejorative.
I mean, he had a whole history of doing that. He did that on Blazing Saddles. Like, executives would stop him in the elevator and make suggestions on jokes he should take out, and he ultimately did nothing. Like, he had director's cut. I mean, he made no changes.
That's because Mel Brooks is a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Right? Mel Brooks is a filmmaker. Not every movie made it great, but he's a filmmaker, and he's a genius.
He is.
And he was working with another genius, and they made the fucking movie they wanted to make.
They did.
And it's great. And this movie was made by many, many people.
It was.
Most of whom are not filmmakers, and potentially have no souls. And when that many...
I'd go further, I would say.
When that many soulless people get involved...
Yeah.
Making a great film is about as likely as, the old monkeys typing out Shakespeare thing.
Yeah.
It could happen. But if it happens, it'll be random.
Yeah.
It'll just be like just some weird bit of luck.
Soulless describes this movie. That is 100% correct. And it's because of the involvement. It's because of the process. It gets just sucked out of the creative process that it becomes numb and pointless, and it's unenjoyable.
I know people who are like in the industry, and you have like, how many people have to pass on this script? I mean, what's the number? I would have no guess. An
insane amount of people.
How many people? Like, it's 20, 30, 50? Like, it's insane. I don't even know. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Right? But like, it's just so... Honestly, yeah, like I said, I feel bad for these people because the problem is getting to make this movie. It's like winning a trip to someplace, like a luxury, all expenses trip to someplace that you really don't want to go. You're gonna take it because it's free,
yeah,
and because who doesn't take it? But it ultimately becomes very unpleasant, right? Yeah. Because it's a poison chalice. This is a poison chalice.
It really is.
It's the most... In some ways, it's more because, at least with Star Wars, they've created a couple ways... Like the main storyline has been a disaster, but they've created little pockets where you can at least make some things that are good, right? You can make, Rogue One. You can make Mandalorian, right? There are things that are at least decent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, this thing, it's just one... it's just in the main storyline. There's not like going to be some extended universe where you make a Muncher movie, right, and follow the exploits of Muncher.
They hint at the end of the movie, Ernie Hudson's coming back.
Of course, they're going to make more movies.
Of course,
they're going to make more movies.
Implication.
But there's no room to breathe.
No.
Right? There's no room. Which, like I said, that's what makes the Marvel project more successful and what makes those movies more watchable. Is that they can carve out all these little spaces where they don't feel as constrained, right? Within the realm of big budget filmmaking in this continuous universe, which, like I said, is growing incoherent, right? Like, you can't... Like, if you actually were to ask yourself what it would be like to be on the earth of either Ghostbusters or Marvel movies, I don't know what I would be doing. I don't know if I'd become a cannibal. I don't know if I would be joined like I would probably try to join some sort of like sex colony or something. I don't know what I would do, but I wouldn't just be going about my fucking business if every 5 years apocalyptic events occurred. No. If every 20 years, Gozer the Gozerian showed up. I wouldn't be pumping gas. Like I have to tell you that. Right, and so these worlds...
You gotta live life in the now, in the hedonistic now.
I don't know, like I said, I don't know what I would do, but remember, we live in an age where a significant percentage of the American population believes in, like, millenarian-style apocalyptic shit.
Yeah.
Just based on the events that we are currently experiencing in reality. So transpose some actual apocalyptic events into this world. I mean, it's actually, now that I say this, it's an interesting thought experiment. I would watch a movie about that world.
I would.
Because it would be weird.
It would.
Not a post-apocalyptic world, but movie, but an apocalyptic, a sort of intra-apocalyptic movie.
Yeah.
Where significant numbers of people were like, this is it. This is happening.
Yeah.
Right?
That would be at least an interesting
maybe that's the premise
study.
of Leftovers. I know a lot of people like that show. I haven't watched
Very
that
good.
show.
No, it's excellent.
Like,
excellent
what if the
show.
rapture happened, right? Okay, that's interesting, right?
Yes.
I can get some, but like to live in this world where fucked up, crazy things happen, and people just are like, well, no way it could happen again. It's just, it beggars belief.
Yes.
It's just insane.
Yeah. Well, so with Ghostbusters, I don't know how much more we can say. I mean, we could get into more specifics, but I mean, ultimately,
I feel good about what we've said.
Yeah, ultimately, it is a soulless, empty vessel of what is completely wrong with modern blockbusters. And I actually think it is worse than a lot of the Marvel fare, because at least the Marvel fare sits on some sort of foundation that has been established and it has charm. None of these characters, the problem of introducing all these new characters under the guise of familiarity, they strain, they don't get the proper time, and they're very uninteresting. And so just getting into what is potentially a winning strategy of charming, this movie doesn't have that. And you ultimately when you get to the end, when you do have a return of the cast, an ultimate inevitable return of the original cast, all of them, including the dragged out corpse of Harold Ramis, which is truly unfortunate. It really just sits wrong. Everything sits wrong.
You don't know those characters at the beginning of the first Ghostbusters movie. You don't need to, right? The movie,
they quickly establish you.
Like think about the opening sequence, the whole library sequence.
It's great.
You get that quick sequence with the librarian, and then immediately the movie becomes hilarious, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've said lines like, "Are you Alice menstruating?"
Back off, man. I'm a doctor.
I'm a scientist.
I'm a scientist.
Back off,
Excuse me.
Like from the moment where Egon is like listening to the table and Venkman comes up and starts drumming on it and making sounds. I mean, immediately you're like, you know who these people are, right? Because they effectively leverage, archetypes, right? The way all good movies do. So you know who they are, and they're immediately funny, and you're immediately engaged with what they're doing.
It's quirky, it's charming,
there
it's
isn't
interesting.
A moment in this movie that approaches "Are you Alice menstruating?"
No,
and
not
it's
even
just
remotely.
one throwaway line in the. It's not a throwaway line, but it's like one of many just great. Like, how many times have I looked at my friend and said, like, "Get her, Ray. Your plan was whenever someone has a terrible plan."
Well, I love it.
That's the first thing I say. "Get her, Ray.
Yeah,
your plan was." Get her?
I mean, the cleverness is we can state it full, to the nth degree, because I mean, just little throwaway lines, as you said, how they end a scene and they just let it linger in a cut is he goes, "We should probably split up," and Bill Murray says, "Yeah, we could probably do the most damage that way." Yeah. They just leave it sit. It's so good.
Scene where they unleash the proton pack at the maid. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, it's just so... and the singed toilet paper. It's just like... It's... Like you said, that's just lightning in a bottle.
There's that, but there is also construction. Like, those guys were great. They were comedic geniuses. Harold Ramis helped, and Dan Aykroyd wrote that script. But I think Harold Ramis he's underrated in his impact in comedy. I mean, not a lot of people know. Even his stranger, underappreciated works like Multiplicity are at least interesting. Yeah, no, they're interesting movies.
Look at who you're dealing with here. You're dealing with Bill Murray, top tier comedic actor. Dan Aykroyd, super funny, weird guy.
A very intelligent guy. He's very intelligent but weird. And
Harold Ramis, like, funny dude, also pitch perfect casting, right?
Pitch, yeah.
Rick Moranis, another great comedic actor. Sigourney Weaver, great actor, right? Just a straight up like top tier actor. I mean, you're talking about like just a tremendous collision.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't do that again.
You can't. Like, even those people couldn't do it again, right?
No.
Like I said, Ghostbusters 2, funny but not as funny. That for them, like for many of the people involved in that movie, that is the clear peak of their career.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way it is.
It is.
Right, but all I can say is that it seems pretty clear to me that the conditions that existed to make that movie happen were not the conditions that exist in this movie happen, and they couldn't be.
No.
Right, because of the business, the this has to make money, right? It has to. There's no sense in which this movie can be interesting. No,
none.
There's no way. It just
there's
no way it can be interesting.
All right, well, that's Ghostbusters Afterlife. What a wonderful conversation.
I did after my life right now.
Yeah, I loved your approach though in the beginning. That was great. I loved it.
Oh yeah, and also what I said was true. What begins the turnaround for the mother character is emotionally towards her father Egon is that he was a stalker,
and he stalked her. That's love.
And she sees a corkboard that would put the It's Always Sunny corkboard to shame about her life, and that she's like, oh well, he really did care about me because he stalked me from afar.
Yeah,
and that's the highest form of
bizarre
love. Highest form of love.
Strange
my last
movie.
word on that.
That is, yeah. Let's get into
come on.
A much better movie.
I love this movie.
You love this movie. I'm excited.
I love this movie.
I'm excited to talk about it.
For real this time. Not a bit.
No.
I love this movie. I love Mike Mills.
Mike Mills
I love
is great.
Mike Mills. Mike Mills is in my head. He's in my head. He's in my heart. You're in my heart, Mike. The movies that he's made are just the movies that are right. And I said this to you last night. This movie is going to pose a different challenge. Like, I drink my coffee. I have a rotation of coffee mugs. The most important ones are the one that has my daughter's picture on it and the one that was given to me by my daughter. But outside of that, one of the mugs in my rotation is a 20th Century Women A24 mug.
20th Century Women. So, I mean, Mike Mills...
I love Mike Mills.
Yeah.
I love you, Mike Mills. Not the guy from R.E.M. Don't be confused, although I also like R.E.M. But I love the filmmaker Mike Mills. His movies are so in my groove, right, of what I like in movies, that it is hard for me to talk about. I feel like I'm such a stan, right? It's funny because we're going to talk in a couple weeks about Sean Baker.
Yes,
who's another filmmaker.
Love Sean Baker.
I'm so. It's not even that I'm not here to make. These are my favorites, which is different than me arguing that they're the best, right? I don't know that I'm not going to say that they're the best. These are people who make movies that are very much to my taste.
Yes. Right,
and so it's hard. So I guess I can try, and what I can do in this conversation, I can try to articulate why that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what it is about them that really speaks to me and to what I like in a movie, and maybe that'll be resonant or maybe not.
Yeah.
Because I think people who love movie, they have their people, right?
Yeah, I think
Everyone
so.
has their people, and those two are like two of my of people making movies today. Those are two of my people. Yeah. Two people who just, I just, what they do just hits me right in the core of what I'm looking for from a film.
I'm in agreement. I'm in total agreement. I think Sean Baker and Mike Mills are probing humanists. I think they really want to understand maybe themselves through the human condition. They are very empathetic people. They look around and they see, and Mike Mills in particular though has this kind of personal rumination on his life, whether it's a relationship with his father in Beginners, whether it's a relationship with his mother in 20th Century Women.
His corpus, his project is his life.
Yes.
It's very different from Baker.
Yes.
Like, they have certain similarities. Like, they make movies that are sort of both emotional, profound, but also funny.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of movies I like, right? I like movies that are in that zone, because that's what life is like. Life is sad and funny, right? It's not sad or funny. Life is sad and funny, right? And they both make movies that capture that. But their curiosity, I mean, great art comes from great curiosity. The scope of their curiosities is very different. Mills very inward looking. His
Yes.
movies are all about himself and his life, right? And as we've said many times, specificity breeds universality. It's one of the great mysteries of art, especially narrative art. Specificity breeds universality. Baker is interested in other people.
He is.
He's interested
Fascinated.
He's interested in subcultures and milieus. He's interested in kind of diving into specific subcultures and sort of peeling them apart and looking at what we can learn from looking at something very different from us, right? And how we can see that humanity. But once again, specificity, but a different kind of specificity. Yeah. Very, very outward looking.
Yes, and the inward process of Come On is one that, because the trailer doesn't give you much, but the concept of it being a uncle who is now reconnecting.
Greatest uncle movie of all time, too.
It's very
strong. This is an Uncle Power. This is what great uncle movies are. Uncle Buck, I guess, would be good.
Actually, Gabby Hoffman's an Uncle Buck. Gabby Hoffman's an Uncle Buck. She's in Field of Dreams.
She's in the great uncle movie. I'm trying to think of other great uncle movies.
There's not a lot.
This is definitely going to go to I don't think we get a full season of... I know movies you don't have uncle movies.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe we'd have to look extended family relations.
Wasn't there a movie where Mark Ruffalo played an uncle? He was pretty good.
He would be an uncle.
He would.
Mark Ruffalo has big uncle energy, no question.
He does, absolutely. Well, and so this is a rumination about a man who is... His project is... he's a radio...
He's like an NPR guy.
NPR guy, radio journalist.
He does like NPR stuff.
And he goes around the country and interviews children and their perceptions, their uncertainties of the world, their fears, anxieties.
Well, how they feel about the future.
In the future,
What do you think about the future? Yeah, about their present, but also how they see the future.
How they see the future. And the project is interesting and how it relates thematically with the movie, because then he gets thrown into in sort of a reluctant task of becoming a caretaker for his nephew. And it would be because of some elements going on in his parents' lives that are very, very, I think, well thought out and very, emotionally driven. It all makes sense. This is no it all makes sense that you would be sympathetic to coming in and wanting to be there for your sister and by being there for her son.
But what's interesting about this, right, is everything you've said is correct, but it's a bit of a bait and switch, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because this movie is actually about the same thing as his last movie was about. It's about motherhood.
It is. It's
a movie about motherhood, right? Which seems counterintuitive, although the movie's really a three-hander. That's really what it is. Although there are some important peripheral characters, but it's really about, the mother, the uncle, the son.
Yes.
That's the triangle of the movie. And it's about the uncle trying to be a mother.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's what, for a brief period of time. And even then confronting what it is, what motherhood, like getting the closest experience he can get to what motherhood feels like. And being overwhelmed by it.
Very much.
So it's really a movie about motherhood again, right? Which I think is very interesting. Taken from a very different perspective, right? It's actually more about motherhood than 20th Century Women. Because 20th Century Women is more about... It's about motherhood, but it's also kind of about...
It's the various women that can impact a man's life. Whether it is aunts or mothers or sisters or lovers or friends.
Yeah.
It is about a dynamic... personalities of women,
and it's more of a coming of age movie too, about the main character and how that coming of age is shaped by a group of women, right? Whereas this movie is very much about motherhood, about what it is to raise a child, right?
Yes,
that's where the action is.
Yeah.
The kid is great, but it's not a coming of age movie about the kid. The kid is more the catalyst of the action than the one who. The kid does develop, but the development is really more in, it's really more about Joaquin Phoenix's development with the two of them as the foil.
Yes.
As the foils to kind of draw him out.
And it's wonderfully done because, the fact that his job is about communicating with children and trying to understand them, the whole actual process of being there for a child and having the frustrations of not understanding, not really knowing them. I mean, it is a true awakening because it is a wonderful portrait of trying to really connect with a child intimately. To really be there, understand them, and so it's so interesting to set it up in that way where these children, he's talking to them, but he's not really there for them. He's giving them an opportunity to express themselves, and so I thought it was a wonderful use of this to bring you into this character that to really understand is to be with that child, is to care for that child, is to feel for that child. You can have a disassociation, a disconnect, and say that you care. I think he genuinely cares about the future. I think he wants these kids to have a future. He was worried about the future for them, and he wants to. It's a good journalistic technique, but it really is about connection. And it's such a wonderful movie because of that. You feel it. This is a movie that could get hopped up in sentimentality, and there's sentimental elements, but it is so grounded in realism. It's grounded in the naturalism of this kind of relationship, the struggles, the frustrations, the anger, the sadness, and it is truly about, it is him coming to terms with understanding his sister. That is his growth. That is his arc. He even at the well, that's a spoiler, but it not really. I haven't given a spoiler away. I stopped myself from giving a spoiler. But the process is so fascinating, and Joaquin Phoenix just balances that line. Shows you.
I didn't see him coming as an actor. I mean, I always thought he was good.
Yeah,
but he really has ascended. He
really
has ascended.
He is exceptional.
He really has ascended. In a way that he's really, because you juxtapose that with, You Were Never Really Here, which is a movie that I think did not get nearly as much attention as it should have.
It's shocking to me because the role he has won an Oscar for, I think, is the least deserving of his work. I mean,
honestly,
You Were Never Really Here.
I couldn't even bring myself to go see the Joker movie.
Yeah, well, it's not worth it.
And it's too bad because I'm sure his performance is good.
It's good
in as much as it can be, but I just had no real interest in engaging with that movie.
But
which I think is about exactly what I think it's about.
Yes,
and I'll just watch Taxi Driver again if I really want to.
If King of Comedy.
If I want to go to that particular territory, right? Which, like I said, I don't know that there's that. It remains relevant, right?
Sure.
I get why sort of people think about this kind of toxic masculinity or whatever. I get it. And this desire to be we're in the wake of, people trying to be heroes and what that might mean, right? I don't get too political, but I get it. But whatever. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
No.
The point is I don't know that I was fully prepared for this guy to just go on a tear. Just go on a tear.
Yeah.
Because, this is such a different movie than those other movies. And it's just, but he just is absolutely pitch perfect.
Yeah.
All the acting is pitch perfect. The kid should get an award. The kid is so good.
He's exceptional. There's some interesting, it was funny.
And if the kid's not great, the movie doesn't work.
That's true. No, the kid has to be, in a sense, charming, vulnerable, strange. There's this whole subplot where he pretends to be an orphan at night, which strikes you as so bizarre and so strange that it couldn't be real. But I gotta tell you, as kids think up of the strangest things.
That's totally everything. The weirdness of this kid, as someone with a slightly young kid, is totally real. Kids will. Kids do say the darndest things. They say crazy shit.
Yeah,
they say crazy shit all the time.
And again, if thematics be damned. It's kind of a little on the nose, but I think it's played very well because it.
But it's perfect. It's the perfect encapsulation of, like I said, what I love. It's funny and sad.
It's funny,
but it also gets at something that this kid is dealing with about his family situation that is very real.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what's great about it. That's just that little bit, right, of him saying what were your dead children like? I mean, it's really like wanting to feel like an orphan, like wanting to feel like taken in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I chose you and I'm bringing you in. Right? That's very profound.
Yeah.
Like, I think any human being can put themselves, and that's why I said it's such a universal feeling, like to be chosen and brought in and loved, right?
Yeah.
Every human being can relate to that fantasy, and every human being can cast themselves to a moment where they felt rejected, where they felt put out, where they felt unloved, and this desire for someone to choose you. And like, this is a child, right? The age is very specific they choose, because the kid is right at that point where they're old enough to understand most things. Like, they have real deep understanding, but they don't have the same emotional tools to deal with it.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't have the ability to be like, to compartmentalize, to be like, I feel terrible about this thing that just happened, but I need to do this other thing anyways. That doesn't come till much later.
No. Yeah.
Right? It's something that you develop through adolescence, right? But he's right at that point where he understands what's going on with his family. Like, the facts are completely clear to him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the same emotional tools to deal with it that he would have even in another 3 or 4 or 5 years later. Right? So it's a very specific period to choose.
Yeah.
Right? It makes a lot of sense.
It certainly does.
Right? Because it really is that moment, like, that's as old as you're gonna get, and as smart as you're gonna get before adolescence kicks in, which then changes everything and totally reshuffles the deck. Yeah. So he's like a very late in his pre-adolescent period, right? So he has that energy of saying crazy things, asking crazy questions, saying things. Even I see in my own kid who's 6. Sometimes saying something really brilliant and then saying something really crazy, and just this constant interplay of all that. And that's the perfect age to explore that particular character.
Yeah, because I mean, it is volatile. It's a volatile time. And there's an interesting, it's not a subplot. I think it's just an interesting thematic that's an undercurrent to the film, is Joaquin Phoenix, and taking care of him, he's like, you're going to forget this. You're going to forget these things. And I think he's trying to tell him that to ease, because I think that in reality, the truth, even though it is a very young age, he's going to remember all of this. It is at a key point where you do remember whether it is traumatic event, whether it is the struggle, whether it is a good time. It becomes like a buddy travel movie, and it's a lovely idea, because it is about leaving more positives than there are negatives in this life, more positive influence than there are negatives, and it's an accumulation, because you can't avoid the negatives. Like, life is, I mean, unless you're incredibly, privileged, I guess is the word for it, unless you're incredibly well off, but even then, it's like, life is a struggle.
Yeah, but health and death and people being fucked up is the thing that touches everyone, right?
Certainly.
Those are the most universal things, because that gets at everyone.
Yeah.
Right? No, there's no way yet, Jeff Bezos may solve this problem, but there's no way yet to live forever, right? Or to live a life free of disease.
Sure, yeah.
That's the stuff. That sort of headline, top-level life stuff. And love, too. You fall in and out of love. I mean, if you have enough, if you're rich enough, you'll be able to find someone else, right? Who'll put up with your bullshit.
Sure.
But you will get your heart broken, right? I mean, everyone has to deal with that.
And it is interesting putting the experience on somebody who doesn't directly have a child, and being confronted with those ideas.
Indirectly have a child.
Well, no, he doesn't directly have this child.
Oh, you're talking about the character.
I'm talking about the character. Well, no, but like I'm in a situation, and I'm not by name an uncle. But I have been, in a position.
You got uncle energy. You can uncle it up.
I've been told.
You got uncle energy.
No, but and so my exposure to children and being there as an adult, but not necessarily being there as their caretaker, it is a very particular experience. It's different, because you at times it is expected upon you to act in lieu of caretaking because you are watching over them. You have them out there. You have to have a sense of disciplinary action. You have to have a sense of control because they are volatile. They are unwieldy, just because they are children. And so for me, I tapped really heavily into his experience to love and care, but not necessarily really understand what's at stake until the end, because it's a hard thing to balance. It's because it is different when you are the direct parent.
Yeah, but I mean, the movie says explicitly in one of these reading sections, right? This actually isn't during a reading. This is something someone said. You know, he's recounting. The kid is recounting what his mother says to him, and one thing that she says is, "We could love each other completely and still never completely know each other." And that goes right to the core of the mystery of life and what Mills is fascinated by and what his project is about, which is like that is at the core of life, right? You love someone, but you can never completely understand another person, which is what makes life interesting, right? But it was also what makes life hard.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that you'll never really understand another person completely.
Yeah.
No matter how much you love them, no matter how well you know them, no matter how much time you spend together, no matter how much you'd want to like meld. Like I would love to meld minds with my child, right? That would be so awesome to see the world really as she sees it. For even a moment, I would love that, to completely be in her consciousness. Because it seems so amazing and weird, right?
Different.
And so different from... This is something you can't access at a certain point in your life. Once you hit adolescence, you know, this movie is about the difference between someone who's not yet grounded in that, right? Because like adolescence is what ties you to the ground, right? It ties you to your libido and your practical desires. It grounds you in very specific like material life shit. That's where that starts to happen, right? Because all of a sudden you start having these desires that you cannot control, right? Like, you know, these very, you know, and obviously kids eat and they need to eat and drink and they need love and all that. They have needs, but that there's just something about sort of starting to see other people in this sexualized way, but just in this like very social way. You become fascinated with your peers. You care about your peers. That's the approval that you care about, right? Which is different than when you're young and you care about how your parents and how adults see you. You start to care a lot more about how your peers see you, and you become connected to people in a different way because it's time to join the tribe, right? It's time to take your place within your group as opposed to be nurtured by your parents. Yeah. But you're still kind of being nurtured by your parents. It's such a different dynamic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And like I said, the previous movie has a lot more to do with that and adolescence and what that means. Whereas this movie is very much about like the sort of interaction between an adult who's dealing with the kind of mundane bullshit that just comes with an adult life, right? Like, how are you going to pay the bills? Like, oh, I got to get you food. Like, what do you want? What all the sort of stuff that taking care of a kid that's very boring and unglamorous. Like, I've got these things. You're hungry, but you won't eat any of these things. What do I do now? I have these 7 options, and none of them are good. What? Just tell me anything. Just say anything that you'll eat.
Yes.
Right? That's parenthood right there. That's part of parenthood.
It is part of parenthood.
Or child rearing.
You know, it's interesting because it's rooted in such interesting perspectives, which the movie balances, as you said. It's this like trifecta of mother and son, / nephew and uncle. And it is about the blurring of this, the fragmentation of experience. And what you were speaking to, you can't truly understand or really know a person, but the movie is trying to blend these 3 experiences, perspectives, really quite well for you as the audience to get at least a vague or really intimate idea of what each of these characters is really going through. Yeah. And it's marvelously done, and it's so interesting that a movie that movie's shot in black and white, a movie about memory, a movie about how the adult world is now infiltrating on the experience of a young person. These are all the things we talked about in Kenneth Branagh's film, is Belfast. And this movie handles it in such a more mature, articulate, and complicated manner. They're addressing the complications of these characters, the complications of this world, whether it is mundane or whether it is just having on the periphery something that is, incredibly minute. Having a father with mental illness and dealing with that might not be a grand dramatic thing, but it's so real, it's so impactful, and it can have an effect on a person, and it strikes me as so much more powerful than, say, Belfast and the incurring political dynamic that is unfolding, that should be traumatic and confusing and hard to deal with. And yet this one deals with such, the stakes seem lower, but for me, dramatically, they are much higher.
Well, but that's a sign that where you put the stakes isn't really what the stakes are in some objective sense really doesn't matter very much, right? I mean, here's the thing that's interesting about what you just said. Branagh feels compelled to talk about a lot of different things and can't talk about any of them effectively because they're all just bouncing around in his head.
Yeah.
It's I have to talk about this.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have anything to say about it, so it's well, then why talk, right? Why talk about it? Not that he has to have something to say, but he doesn't even have a perspective that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has nothing in his perspective. We talked about his perspective on the Troubles. It's just such a nothing, right? It's it's happening and it's bad, right? That's it. That's kind of what he has. I mean, that's
it comes down to that basicness.
Yeah, it's bad, which it was. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's so. But whatever. I don't want to rehash Belfast. I mean,
I was just bringing it. It's an interesting comparison.
I totally grant that. I could just I could go off on a million tangents about that thing, but this is the thing that blows my mind about Mills, is that he's so painfully earnest, and it works, and it makes me feel weird. It makes me feel, it prompts me to continue reassessing my own sort of cynicism or desire to disassociate and create distance from the emotional experience of being a human being, because he has no distance from it, and he is in that way kind of a remarkable and weird character in American filmmaking. He does this thing where he interweaves in interviews with actual kids, asking sort of explicitly the questions that this movie is raising and is engaged with. And that just seems like something that could be sort of painfully corny or painfully on the nose, but it 100% works, and it's very moving. And I think that he is willing to be honest and explicit about what he's talking about and what he's thinking about. And I guess maybe that's refreshing. That's refreshing in a way, right? That he engages with it sometimes directly. He has these moments where Joaquin Phoenix is reading texts that speak to the things that happen, actual texts, actual books and passages from books that speak directly to this idea. One is about motherhood, right? And the fact that mothers have to essentially take on the burden of cleansing the world for their child, this impossible burden, right? And making their child able to function in this fallen world. He reads another passage from this piece, Camera Person.
Kirsten Johnson, yeah.
Where sort of engaging with what is difficult and problematic about documenting people's lives, right? The very thing that he's doing. What might be good about it, but also what is kind of difficult or even sort of gross about it, right?
Yeah.
Engaging with that, the sort of dilemma of someone who wants to be a documentarian, right? It's I'm giving this person a platform, but I'm also profiting off the fact that I'm giving it to them, and I get to leave and they have to stay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very, and he's just, and these are just texts that are getting written out loud, and it all. This is the thing about Mills that blows my mind, that makes him very unique to me from basically any filmmaker, is that he does the most things that I feel like shouldn't work, but they end up working. They end up working to great effect. Like, all these things I've described to you, there's something in my mind that tells me that shouldn't work. That's too on the nose. That's too earnest. That's too sentimental. That should fuck up your movie. But it makes his movie.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that blows my mind.
Yeah.
That is like the central thing, is he engages with like big ideas about life, and he also interweaves it into the political context of the moment in a way that is very effective, and I just feel like it shouldn't work. I feel like when he goes to New Orleans, I feel like it shouldn't work. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but whatever. We'll do spoilers now.
I mean, we've been. This is not a movie.
It feels like it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
It all feels like it just should fuck it up, right? Because although I'm sure him and I have like similar politics, I don't like to be preached to. I don't watch movies like tell me that I'm right? But at the end of the day, I think what you've identified is that it's not political. Like, so much when we say political, it's about partisan politics.
Yeah, but
that's not really what this is about. This is about a kind of humanism.
Yeah.
Right? A kind of deep humanism. But the way he interweaves these intellectual strains and these sort of very, these kind of weird metafilmic gestures, right? Like interviewing actual kids, doing actual NPR, like those were real interviews that they really did.
Yeah.
I think the other person is an actual
radio
reporter.
Yeah, I think that is true.
He has a partner, and she's actually, I think, does like one of the people does like on the media or something. It all works, and it just blows my mind.
Well, it's a lot can be said for sincerity, right?
He's like, so fucking sincere.
Because even though these are you could talk about them being orchestrated sentimentality, which a lot of people are very good writers or know how to write a good screenplay based off of what they're informed, based off of histrionics, based off of this idea of being sentimental. He genuinely feels for his subjects because they're essentially him. Like and what he wrestles with either as an uncle or as a son or as somebody who's being impacted by these events. And so because they are so personal to him, that sincerity breathes so much life into what could be argued as on the nose sentimentality, and but it's not. It is so deeply personal. It's articulated well, and all of the thematics are being chosen because they are trying to venture a thoughtful response to the characterization. They are inventions, but they're rooted in a deep sense of his own struggles and a deep sense of wanting to understand humanity, wanting to understand people, the gaps, the fragmentation, the difficulty of experience and perspective. And he wrestles with that so wonderfully well, whether it is beginners or 20th century women. And this, Come On, I think is a great version of what he as you call it, a project, because I think it is that. I mean, we're seeing a project, a very personal project, cinematic project being created in front of our eyes that I don't think we're going to really understand the extent of it or the power of it until much later into his career, where we can actually look back upon these moments, how he was developing, how he was feeling. Because they are very powerful emotional works, and subtly so. It's not overwhelming. It's not in your face. It's not, as you said, even though the politics are subtext to this film, it's not preachy. But it's trying to really articulate something that is personal to him. And I love that about it. And it gives me so much to connect with, to think about. When I walk away, it lingers in your mind based off of how charming, natural, believable these characters are in all of their intricate and personal struggles. I mean, and the performances enhance it. Joaquin Phoenix, Gabby Hoffman. I forget the kid's name. I feel really bad. I should bring that up on IMDb.
You should feel bad. I think Mike Mills would say you shouldn't feel bad.
Would he say that?
I think he'd say, that's just life. You forget things.
You forget
sometimes.
things. I mean, because he's wonderful. His name's Woody Norman, and I mean, he's a revelation in order to give. You were the one who got me to, because last week I announced a different lineup for this particular episode. It was going to be Ghostbusters Power of the Dog, but we're saving that for a different conversation because I think you are correct. Both of these movies showcase an aspect of childhood that's different, like the awe and wonder of childhood.
They're both movies about family, too.
And about family.
Yeah.
And so this one showcases the strength and value of giving voice and an authentic voice to a child experience. And Woody Norman does a great job in venturing the complexities of that.
Yeah, well, and what you said about the whole thing with EGOT is exactly right. Like, a movie like Ghostbusters can only see that character as a villain or a hero. So he's a villain for most of the movie to his family. And then at the end, he's a hero. And of course, that has nothing to do with real life, and it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
The world is not populated by heroes and villains. It's populated by people, right? If we're interested in people and we care about them, right? We care about human beings. Like, we actually have a sort of warmth towards human beings, towards human flourishing. Then we have to sort of try to see them, right?
Yeah.
We have to try to see them, right? And I think, that's Mills, is he's in the process of just trying to understand his life and the life of people around him. And sort of like I said, that this idea of motherhood, I mean, I've been very fortunate in my life, right? Because I'm professionally a fuck up, right? I have not succeeded at many things. And so I have been, for big chunks of Carolina's life, Carolina's my daughter, her primary caretaker, right? I'm not going to say that makes me have to bear the burden of motherhood or anything like that, but I would say that I have had a higher than level amount of time that has been engaged in the rearing of my child.
Yeah.
Right? I was the one that stayed home with her for much of her before she started going to school. And this movie, just the way that it sort of exists, the way that it deals with what it means to raise a child today, and how to sort of create this kind of cocoon around them, right? Mm-hmm. That you want to create, while still raising them like in the world as it exists, and then watching them slowly emerge from that cocoon. I mean, I live in East Hollywood. I walk past people passed out on the street, taking my child to school and bringing her home from school. That is the world in which we are called upon to rear the next generation. The world that we have profoundly fucked up, right? The world that we have we are going to hand to these kids, that we have failed them. We as a people have failed the next generation in America. I have no problem saying that. I'll fight anybody who disagrees with me. But like, you still love your child beyond, just like the mom says, you love them in ways that you can't even really understand, and that feels so weird and crazy, right? Crazed, right? I remember when my wife was pregnant, in the latter month, in like the last month or two of her pregnancy, one of the jobs I had then was I'd go to farmer's market, I'd sell fancy popsicles. I remember I would see small children and I would have this like visceral emotional reaction. Like, if someone tried to hurt that kid, I would kill them. Right? I remember having this feeling just seeing random children, and it had to be something like psychological, maybe something pheromonal. I don't even know. But I remember having these being instinctively protective of children, like feeling that in my gut in a way that I never felt before. And this movie captures that. It captures that feeling of like feeling so responsible for this like little person, right? And for that alone, it's very profound and well done, and it also does all these other things really well. And like I said, it's hard for me to talk about this movie.
Sure, yeah.
Even though I could talk about it forever. I know you're laughing at me at home because I can just run my fucking mouth nonstop. But it's just, yeah, like, this dude gets it, and he's, and not many do. Like, not many people are operating on the level of being such profound chronicler. I mean, he is, and that's why I love Baker too, because the two of them in their ways are two of our best current chroniclers of, you know, the America in the late 20th and early 21st century. They're two of the people who are making the kinds of movies that I would show to someone in 100 years to say, like, yeah, this gets something about what life was
what
like.
was going on. Yeah, just
this gets
at least a part of it. And
this gives, but it has to be a part.
Yeah,
it has to be a specific part.
Yeah,
right?
very much so. Yeah. I mean, that is the project, isn't it? It's, even though this is a very particular subject, and some people might criticize it in the sense that it doesn't get captured in its fullest extent. But then again, isn't that life? Isn't that what the whole thing is about? Is that we're never going to really understand it fully, but that you get very, very close. You get very close by at least ruminating, at least venturing, at least pondering these people as real people, as not just fictionalized versions, but as fictionalized versions put in, as you said, this wonderful blend of real kids, putting them in the aspect of the real world, where you shoot it in this wonderful black and white that brings to mind I mean, it's usually nostalgia, but it's almost like capturing in its essence this time, this moment. It's almost like a picture, and it's capturing this moment with this kid, and what it's going to mean for this kid, what's going to mean for his uncle, what it's going to mean for his mom.
But it makes smart decisions on so many levels, though. Like, it's very. He makes a very specific choice. The movie spans 4 cities.
Yeah.
The 2 middle cities are New York and L.A., the places that are still thriving ostensibly for at least some people.
Yeah.
The first place is Detroit, and the last place is New Orleans. It's very conscious decisions, right? So you have the 2 media capitals, the 2 places that still have at least a class of people who are winners, coupled with, you know, Detroit, which is the shell of its former self, and New Orleans, where we basically let it, you know, New Orleans is a city where we allowed in the United States of America, richest country in the world. New Orleans is a city where we allowed an internal displacement of 1 million people from that city. Mm-hmm. There were 1 million refugees. That's what they are. If you are displaced by disaster, you're a refugee. Internal migration doesn't get thought of in the same way as crossing a national border. But we had 1 million people displaced, and that's where he goes to end the movie. There's a reason he does that.
Yeah.
Right? Think about the world that you're giving these kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about that you can live in the richest country in the world and have 1 million climate refugees from a city. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's you know, he knows what he's doing there. Yeah, he knows what he's saying, right? Like, how do we meet our obligations to the next generation?
I was going to ask you a question. This would be a spoiler, so we're
definitely in the spoilers. We're in the spoilers.
I mean,
Uncle Power.
I had a question because I just saw it yesterday, and I haven't I've thought about it, but I knew we were going to have the conversation, so I thought about it. The ending is an interesting one because I'm still wrestling with whether it's again. There's these like Malick flourishes that he has, where, you know, it weaves in and out of experiential, like almost dreamlike passages. And the ending is, again, it's a recording. It's something he's bestowing upon his nephew. And there are interesting implications to it, but I was just going to ask you a question and just to talk it out, because ultimately it's him leaving his nephew with something, because he laments the idea of, you're going to forget about this. And he's leaving him with a memory, a recorded, documented memory that he can keep, and that it will stay with him. I don't know where I land on this. Do you think he died? Do you think that is something that is suggested in this movie because of the health issues that were happening? And
I didn't even think about that.
And then it leaves you with like kind of an ambiguous note where she's go ahead, like she even says like go ahead and listen, as though it's the last thing that he has of his uncle.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that at all. I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't know either.
I don't know.
I was just wondering.
I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, because he collapses, and there's something to that. Like, he faints. He has a health... And I don't know if it's because it is New Orleans, and it's maybe humid, and it is...
Yeah, I mean, the fainting thing kind of comes from nowhere and kind of goes to nowhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting...
I don't think it defines anything about the end other than, it could be the last thing of his uncle that he has, which would be very sad.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I guess... See, I thought you were going to go in a different direction about just what does that ending kind of signify more broadly. So maybe I can answer that question.
Yeah, if you want.
By way of answering your question.
Yeah.
Or at least by a way of gesturing at your question.
Sure.
Carolina, my daughter, is very obsessed with time, right? As children are. Like, if you tell her, give me a minute, she'll start counting, and she'll count to 60. She knows there's 60 seconds in a minute. And we were doing this sort of mathematical exercise, right? Like, well, how many minutes are there? And how many minutes in a day? And I ultimately ended up doing some multiplication on my phone, and it's like I realized, like, I've lived for like billions and billions of seconds, right? I mean, when you start looking at the numbers, it's kind of ludicrous. Like, how many moments have there been in my life? If a moment just means like that, right? So many orders of magnitude more than I could ever remember or capture, right? And even my memories themselves are sort of, like anyone's memories. I mean, they're corrupted. It's hard to know, what's real and what's not real, right?
Yeah.
I remember things one way, someone else remembers it another way. This is all things that we all know, right? But one thing that I think that ending drives home, right, which is, I think, something that cinema is uniquely capable in this Malikian way, as you say. The process of making a family, right? And I mean family in a way that is both inclusive and robust. So it does nothing to do with genetics, right? Or having a genetic relationship to someone necessarily. It has to do with the process of living together over the course of decades, right? And building this thing that you call a family over the course of decades, is a process of collaborative storytelling. It's a process of how you conceive of yourselves, right? And the story we tell collectively, right? Because families have their own language, right? They have their own words. They have their own inside jokes. They have their own formative stories. Carolina is always asking us to tell the story of when she was born, the story of when she was diagnosed with diabetes, right? She's always asking us to tell these stories, right? She has this instinctive desire to sort of constantly be telling and retelling and formulating. She actually did a very cute thing at the coffee shop this morning where she told the story of me and her mother falling in love from her perspective. It was pretty simplistic, but it was still extremely adorable in the way that she always is. And this movie drives that home, right? Is that narrative is always something we impose, right? And I spend a lot of time thinking about what narratives do to people, right? You can think of all kinds of roles that narratives play in life, from helping our family have cohesion to making people hate other people, right? In fucking crazy reasons, right? That's all undergirded by narratives, right? That's all undergirded by a story you tell.
Yeah.
About how Kyle is the worst motherfucker in the world, or he's the best motherfucker in the world, or
I don't know if
he's just a normal motherfucker, right? Or whatever, right? Whatever story you tell. And so I thought that end was a kind of very elegant way to sort of present the story, right? Like, because when he says that, saying that you'll forget it's funny, right? It's like so much of this movie and life, it's very ambiguous, because in one sense it's trivially true, right? Even if you had a very good memory, your memory of it would still be composed of a couple of cloudy images in your mind. Maybe you look at a picture and that gives you something, but even the picture could lie to you about, like, maybe that was the only moment you were smiling or the only moment you were frowning, right? There's no way to grab it, really.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's about the stories we tell. It's about the narrative you form. And so that bond is ultimately a bond that is cemented by narrative.
Yes.
and when you think about family, right, family can be cemented by narratives, or it can be driven apart by narratives, right? Because you and I you and your sibling or you and your parent have a different narrative about why things are the way they are. I think everybody who has a family can relate to that, right? Like, you tell yourself a different story than, and I'm not using story in a pejorative sense. I'm just saying, like, you have a different account of why this problem exists than someone else.
Absolutely.
And that creates conflict, right? Or you and I have the same account, like, we both think that, like, we want to talk about films, right? So that brings us together. We have this story of our lives that involves watching movies and talking about them, right? And so that coheres us. Like, so to me, a lot of this movie is about kind of how, this is a thing that another thing I think about with Carolina a lot, about now that we send her to school. It's like, we live in this fragmentary, sort of falling apart society where we're breaking apart. We can't cohere. And it's like, how do you tell a story as a society, as a civilization, as a country that indoctrinates people? And indoctrinate is a word that has bad connotations, but I mean it in a good or at least neutral way. Like, to have a functioning society, people need to be indoctrinated into the idea of the society, right? Like, this is a thing worth being a part of. And you and I have something in common because we're both Americans, or we both live in Los Angeles. Like, we have a certain solidarity there that comes from a group identity, from a shared narrative about a shared project that we have, right? And in that way, society, social units are just bigger and smaller macro or microcosms of each other. The family unit is the fundamental unit of society, and it coheres or doesn't cohere based on the sharing of certain values, but also certain stories, right, about who we are. We're a loving family, we're a caring family, like, we have fun together, or whatever, right? But to me, the movie kind of comes around to that, right?
I think so too.
Which is that, like, this is at the end of the day, who we are is about the stories that we tell to each other and the stories that we embrace about ourselves and our place in the world. That's a very long-winded answer.
No, I think that was wonderful, because ultimately that's what the ending is, I think, is about, whether or not my interpretation of.
But I get where you're coming from. I get where I mean, but I also think that there's, like, to me, there's that ending is also about the sense in which. It's about memory, right?
Well,
it's about.
But it's also the bridging of the gap. It's that he's been a year absent from even talking to his sister. Like, there is a hesitancy of even picking up the phone. I mean, just because of the troubles and the differences they had, the dynamic differences, dramatic differences of interpreting their mother's death, and that they both had different relationships, and that that struggle pushed them apart. And so the movie is about them coming together.
But the climax of the movie is so quiet and so it's very quiet done. Which is that he makes 3 statements about their relationship that she agrees with, and that represents their healing. That's the climax of the movie.
He says
that's the emotional climax of the movie. Is
he goes, I got involved in something that I had no understanding of.
Yes. Basically, I got in between you and your husband, but I didn't really know what was going on.
And she goes, well, that's something we can agree with.
We didn't talk because of the way our mom's last days went, and my life blew up because my romantic relationship ended. He admits those 3 things. She says, those are all true, and you've never said those. That's the emotional climax of the movie. That's what the movie is driving towards, is their reconciliation. And it's so quiet.
Very.
It's so quiet.
It's wonderful.
It's done without fanfare or bombast, but it's extremely touching. And I think everybody who's been estranged and then come back together with people can relate to that moment. That moment where you say you're honest and you say, I mean, I did this, and I love you, and let's make it better.
It is about coming to his self-awareness. I mean, he gets asked a lot of questions about, why are you alone? Why are you this? He doesn't have the answer. He tries to look for an explanation, but he doesn't have these answers. And ultimately, it is about him having that reconciliation. It is such a touching, lovely, subtle movie because of that. And I find movies like that are not as pronounced in their emotionality are last in an emotional sense with you. This is such a rewatchable kind of movie because of that. Because it will sustain and its power grows because of how quiet it is. And so I just even talking about it today, I'm like, I deeply appreciate this movie.
Yeah. His movies, like, they make you feel something, and feeling something is good, and ultimately you feel good because you felt something.
Yeah.
And because they connect on that level, that level of real life.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
Although I will say I was a little disappointed the AC/DC song didn't show up, because when it was Come On, Come On, I was sure it was going to be Come On, Come On, Love Me for the Money.
Money
and
talks.
And that's not where the Come On, Come On comes from. If you watch
you just have to keep come on.
Life just keeps coming on, which is true, right? It just keeps coming and coming and coming at you. The best laid plans of mice and men, but life just keeps coming at you.
Love the last scene that he has direct with his nephew, where he's upset and I think it's been done in a movie before, but there's something so resonant about it. And he goes, "It's okay." Because he's like, I'm fine. He goes, "It's okay if you're not fine. And it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a variant of the "It's not your fault" Good Will Hunting scene.
Yeah. But it's not your fault. But I mean, with a 9-year-old, it's like, it's different. He's like, it's okay. You keep saying you're fine because adults keep saying they're fine. This is a thing that and I'm not fine. He goes, I'm not fine. I'm not fine too.
Yeah, because adults are very invested with being okay.
Yeah.
Right? Which, of course, is bullshit.
It is.
It's a horse shit way to live. But people do a lot of dumb, unhealthy shit, including pretend they're fine when they're not. Yeah.
The emotional climaxes of this movie are so well earned. And they come around surprisingly. It follows kind of a similar structure of what these movies are about, but Mike Mills knows how to bring them in such a genuine way. And so I don't know if I have much more to say, but I really genuinely adore this kind of movie.
Go see it. See Come On, Come On.
Yeah, if you listen to us talk
love
about
you, Mike
it,
Mills.
You haven't seen it. Yeah, Mike Mills is fantastic.
I'm not even going to tell Mike Mills to come on the pod. Just make another movie, Mike. Make as many movies as you can.
That. He's made more in the last part of his career than his wife has. So, I mean, she's coming around again.
Yeah, I mean, they're living a life. They got a kid. They're doing their thing. I hope they're doing well. I hope they feel great.
Me too.
Hope their lives are great. We love you, Mike Mills.
Make another movie.
Just keep making movies. I mean, if you have a few spare moments, you want to come on the pod, I would be nervous meeting you because you are one of my faves. Yeah, I would probably be weird, but you seem like a nice dude. You probably would be friendly to me.
Yeah,
even though I'd be fucking weird and be like, I love you, and I'd just start crying. And it would be weird. It would be weird. Maybe not uncontrollably. I'd probably start crying. I'd start thinking about the movie. Yeah. And we'd talk about our kids, and maybe you'd start crying. It would be great. It would be really.
I would love to see.
It would be really weird for you, and I still think you should do it.
Yes, it would.
It'd be awkward for you.
It would be very awkward
because I would just be like, "Oh, I love you," and I don't feel that way about many people because I'm old and jaded. But you pierce through that, Mike Mills. You pierce through my jaded exterior, and into this gushy, smelted core of my my love for my family and my love for my fellow humans, and my hope that they stop fucking up.
Yeah,
that we stop fucking up, because I'm fucking up too. It's not productive to say they. It's not productive to try to pretend it's someone else's problem that, and to demonize them.
Yeah.
What is helpful is to say it's all of our fault. It's all of our project to make things better. And I feel that way today because of you, Mike, and thank you for that.
No, thank you, Mike
Thanks,
Mills.
buddy.
It's wonderful to see another Mike Mills film. All of them have impacted me in an emotional sense. So, yeah, this was great. This will last with me, I think.
Yeah, they linger. They stick in you. They stick in you.
It's a wonderful performances, all three. Woody Norman, Gabby Hoffman, Joaquin Phoenix, great.
I keep on thinking you're saying Abby Hoffman.
Oh yeah,
like
Abby Hoffman, the comedian. No, Gabby Hoffman. This was a great. I liked having this conversation with you, and it made me really articulate and find why I walked away feeling really positive about it, because it is a movie that will last. And you'll probably get another episode with us. Tomorrow is how I imagine my editing process will go.
We're gonna come back. You get double. You get double.
So tomorrow we'll be coming back. We're reuniting tomorrow for recording for King Richard and The Power of the Dog, and those I think will be interesting conversations. And next week, the aim is to have another 2, but we'll see how the holidays go, and we'll see how movie watching goes. But
should we eat turkey on the pod? We should just gorge ourselves.
If I got leftover turkey, we'll do that. Yeah,
I'll have leftovers. Don't worry.
Oh, good. I
gotta buy a turkey for basically 3 people will eat.
Yeah, I'll probably
3 people eating turkey.
Yeah,
because my kid doesn't eat meat, and my sister-in-law is vegan.
Well, there you go. Well,
maybe I'll get Carolina to try turkey. Maybe she'll take like a little piece and go, nope.
Yep, that's. I look forward to that story. Tell me how successful that was.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one.
But we'll probably do 2 episodes. I guess House of Gucci would be the anchor for one, and then we'll maybe Licorice Pizza with that. But then we got Encanto, Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical out of Disney. So we got an animated movie coming up. And the other one I haven't figured out yet, but I think it's either The Humans or Drive My Car, depending on what we can find in the theater.
Until the Kurt Warner movie comes out, we're really pretty fucked.
Yeah, that's true. He'll save us. He'll save cinema.
What's the line from Waiting for Godot? If he doesn't come, we'll surely hang.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Until Kurt Warner comes, we're fucked.
That's what it is. So, Ben, thanks for doing this. Dead Reckoner podcast, Ben Thelen, and then I Know Movies and You Don't, with me, Kyle Bruehl, and thanks for doing this with us.
Smash the like, smash the subscribe, sound off in the comments.
That was the first time you did that today.
I think it might be the second.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. We'll see you tomorrow.